Psychologists, therapists of Reddit, what are some bad pieces of mental health advice you've seen on social media? I saw someone tell another individual with schizophrenia that they didn't need medication. What they really needed is the motivation to cope with their mental illness symptoms. Motivation, yes. I have bipolar and some people that know ask if I've considered going for a no medication approach. Yeah, I tried. In that time I had more suicide attempts than I can count and I was extremely volatile and unstable. Medication has given me an actual opportunity to live and function like an adult. Do you know what it's like to not be suicidal or manic? It's really nice. I won't give this up for anything. I had somebody in the our narcissistic parents group privately message me after I posted about entering therapy because of my childhood, telling me the easiest way to deal with it was to forget about it and move on with my life. Easiest way to deal with it was to forget about it and move on with my life. If life was this easy, therapy wouldn't be a thing. What a shitty thing to say to someone. In my day kids didn't have these so-called mental health issues. Get over it. That's because in the good old days, affected persons fell through the cracks and committed suicide, became homeless and vanished, or were locked up away from society until they died. So what you're seeing is survivorship bias. Seriously. When my husband's grandpa was 8, his older brother sat down at the breakfast table and shot himself in the head in front of the whole family. My grandmother was addicted to prescription drugs and alcohol to manage her bipolar disorder. My other grandmother wrote extensively about her postpartum depression and instances of self-harm. She spilled an entire kettle of boiling water on herself so that she would be too injured to take care of her baby and the family would need to get a nanny. That's not even touching on some of the stories they told about their fathers with PTSD from World War I. They may not have had the right labels and diagnosis for mental illness, but it was there. Affected persons fell through the cracks and committed suicide, became homeless and vanished. Still holds true to an extent even today. Just because social media exists doesn't mean people are more connected. No other phrase angers me more than get over it. My parents told me to get over it when I bawled because my friend shot himself in the head with his grandfather's shotgun at the age of 12. When I was 16 and told my mother I had thoughts of killing myself, my father barged into my room and angrily yelled at me to get over it. When I finally got professional help a couple of years ago and my mother accidentally found my antidepressants, she told me flat out to get over it. I'm generally a passive, level-headed person these days, but no other phrase, when uttered in my presence, will make my rage level go from 0-100 faster than get over it, in any context. What you choose to do online doesn't affect your mental health. It's a sentiment I see often. It's garbage. What does that even mean? As both a psych nurse and a counselor, I see so many terrible things. Most of the advice you see online from non-scientific sources is mostly harmless pop psychology stuff, and some can actually be helpful. For example, don't use your phone in bed to help you sleep better at night, or daily meditation for mindfulness, etc. But there are things I see online all the time that are just such bullshit I'm not even sure how they are legally allowed to stay up. Such as almost anything to do with essential oils. Some essential oils in small amounts can be useful for mild aromatherapy in some conditions, can help with seasonal affective disorder, or as additives in medicinal mixes, but otherwise there's basically no evidence that essential oils do anything other than cost a lot of money and destroy the environment. Some can be legit dangerous to your health. People who claim there is any kind of trick that will snap you out of depression or addiction, or motivational speakers who claim that you just need to think positive. If some people find that helpful, that's great, but there is basically no evidence that self-help stuff is better than placebo when it comes to depression or other conditions. Anyone who tells you that you just need to get over it is full of shit and doesn't actually understand what it means to process something difficult. But the big one for me is when people claim that emotions are somehow illogical, and that acting like an emotionless logic machine is the best way to be. Emotions are generally perfectly reasonable responses to thoughts and events, at least within the context of a person's own subjective experience. Telling people that they shouldn't be so emotional or shouldn't let their emotions get to them is not only practically useless, it's also completely invalidating a person's experience. Sure, it's good to learn to process emotion and control behavior, but that's not the same as saying emotions are bad. This was longer than I intended it to be. Sorry everybody. Your emotions are always valid. You have a right to however you're feeling. What you don't have a right to though, is using those emotions to justify horrible actions. Example, someone cuts you off in traffic. Being angry is a valid emotional response, nothing wrong with it. What is wrong is them channeling that anger into driving recklessly to get back at the driver. Typically they show pictures of sun breaking through trees and saying you don't need meds or nature is medicine or this is a real antidepressant, etc. Except some people do. Maybe they need both. Some people can find healing without medications, some cannot, and that's okay. Sun? What's that? Me living though in English November, caked in mud despite not even going outside. Everything happens for a reason, don't let it get to you. Absolutely not the right advice to give someone and actually can make things a lot worse. I appreciate the sentiment, but it can come across as very hurtful and maybe even vindictive when said in certain scenarios. On the flip, one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from my therapist. This was in the pits of depression after someone had sexually assaulted me. She said that essentially I was holding on to a debt that would never be repaid and that in the end, the debt would only hurt me and not the person who owes me. It is best to write it off as bad debt and move on. Actually saved my life, that one piece of advice. Obligatory, not a therapist, but a doctor. People telling others you can just choose to not be depressed, or that you need to self-care yourself back to a normal psychological state. Yes, healthy food, exercise, and enough sleep is definitely important. But too many people discredit the disease status of depression and claim it's just a feeling. No, sadness is a feeling. True depression needs therapy and possibly medication. Amateur analysis of mental health issue through comments or posts. You aren't qualified to diagnose someone, don't do it. Even if you are, you should leave it to a professional environment where your words can actually have some positive impact rather than be slapping someone with your bachelor's degree for upvotes. I'm not a psychologist, but when I had my depression my roommate told me to just pull myself together. We don't live together anymore. An app. Most advice I see online is horrendous. The first step towards a cure is admitting you are sick. Instead, most people encourage people with issues thinking their good intentions will cure the other person. In the long run, they have hurt them immensely. Are into psychiatry? I'm not a psychologist, but my guess is they hate that. You are wasting 1/3 of your life sleeping, not just bullshit but a recipe for madness and death. Not a therapist, but someone told me to just don't cut yourself, it'll make you look ugly. I always see people post depressed quotes and things like 2020 made me realize who was there for and who asked. No, everyone's going through this pandemic bullshit headache together. It seems as though everyone's struggling. Whether it's financially, mentally, or physically, health, we're all going through something and we shouldn't be acting selfishly expecting others to put their lives on hold to cater to ours. Med student and hopeful psychiatrist. Worst I've seen isn't the message, it's the context. Instagram models with their extravagant lifestyles quoting love yourself, maybe not understanding that a lot of the time they set the unrealistic bar that people attempt to reach in their real lives. Don't just shout buzzwords, ground yourselves. Open up about your stories and how you overcame them with sincerity, even if it's at a detriment to your clout. Let people see through the looking glass, just for a second. Not a psychiatrist, but a social worker. A lot of my clients have mental health struggles and are working with me because they have lost custody of their children. It gets really old seeing the hardcore marijuana enthusiasts advocating for people with severe mental health issues get off meds and smoke instead. Marijuana can be very helpful in certain cases, but it is definitely not a be-all, end-all cure. Especially for people that struggle with hallucinations or paranoia, or keeping up with personal responsibility. It can for sure make these things worse for some. I'm glad that my state legalized, but it's frustrating to see a client making good progress on getting stability and make steps to progress their life, and then get convinced by someone with no medical background to stop taking the meds that are helping them in favor of just being stoned all day. I smoke to relax. But I don't pretend that if I just smoke more weed I can throw my albuterol and Wellbutrin in the trash. I need those things to have a good quality of life. Not a therapist psychologist, but I'm bipolar II with ADHD and I get advertisements for natural cures for BPD and ADHD. Diet, exercise, and supplements help but don't cure. I need antipsychotic medications to keep me from having visual and auditory hallucinations. A special salad isn't gonna keep those at bay. The self-care approach of, oh, you deserve to take a nap when you have multiple things to do or buy that thing to make you happy is shitty in my opinion as well. Self-care is actually cleaning your disgusting depression den and doing the shit on your to-do list that you've been putting off for weeks. When I'm hypermanic I spend excessive amounts of money on stupid shit I don't need, so treat yourself is horrible advice. This is super specific to me, but I'm sure others have this mentality as well. Use marijuana to cope with anxiety and depression. Marijuana is a depressant and causes more anxiety after prolonged use. It also can lead to psychotic features and mental disorders. Marijuana has a lot of good uses such as pain management and increasing appetite. It is not an effective treatment method for mental health issues. Just cheer up. Clinical psychology doctorate student and mental health support worker here. Anything to do with getting a full 8 hours, eating healthily and exercise for depression. Yes, those things can have a very positive impact on low moods, but clinical depression usually stems from something and that problem needs to be addressed before these lifestyle tips can truly serve their purpose. I'm not a therapist but I have to chime in here. Subreddits like relationship advice etc have people that will do the absolute opposite of what they should be doing. People go to those places for advice on their love life and their worries and the majority of replies they get are sarcastic and hate-filled emotional punches. Can no one give actual advice within giving the whole I've been giving advice here for years so I know more than you vibe? Just keep going. Worst thing I ever did. Got me a burnout. You just gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps, kid. Thanks, now I can be serotonin deficient and perform a useless task. Not yet a therapist, though I'm currently in the process of applying to a clinical psychology program. Nearly a decade ago, as I was struggling with significant depression and suicidal ideation and was, myself, in therapy and on antidepressants. An individual who did not know this about me, as I was extremely private about this stuff, once went off about how depression is basically a label for a made up disorder and that if someone's feeling bad, they just need to do a good deed to feel better. I didn't say anything at the time, but I wanted to sock him in the face as hard as I could. I regret to this day that I didn't call him out on his but at the time, I was ashamed to be struggling with depression, needing therapy and medication. And I froze up. Not a psychologist but as someone with ADHD, whenever someone tells me to concentrate, my brain shuts off whenever I try to force myself to concentrate and I have none of that sweet dopamine rush at the end that you get. It's more difficult than that. Stop recommending it every time I have something I have to do. So much material is out there about recognizing toxic people, assuming we are all victims who are attracted to the wrong type of people. In therapy, you may actually learn how you have behaved in maladaptive ways that have contributed to strained or prematurely cut off friendships. Not a psychologist, but I do help run a suicide support advice blog. A lot of people have said that they've been told diet, exercise, and yoga. Also that it's all in your head. Dyslexia isn't real. They just need to try harder. Or dyslexia is only reading based. Dyslexia might be shorthand for the whole DIS family of learning disorders, but I assure you they are all real. Depression is cured by sunlight. Yes, going outside can help moderate some symptoms, but it's not a cure. Girls don't have ADHD. Girls don't have autism. Girls are socialized differently, which causes some symptoms to be masked. Teenagers can't get anxiety. Have you seen what's happening inside their brains? I'm amazed they aren't crawling on the ceiling. All those stupid self-care posts that just promote avoidance of the task issue. Taking a walk might give you some space and a chance to recharge, but that essay still needs to be written. That exam sat. Delaying this will only compound the issue. They just need to toughen up. Grumble grumble. Back in my day. Back in your day there was lead in petrol and paint in children's bedrooms. We will just go and tell people's brains to make the right chemicals through sheer willpower. My child is on the spectrum and that makes them special. Yes, however, as anxiety is often found in teens with autism, let's treat that so they don't have to suffer needlessly. Are you preparing your child to live independently? See this for children with intellectual or behavioral issues. Do you want your child to be able to live independently or semi-independently or not? What is our end goal, Karen? I always see stuff about positive thinking and how people have to be positive. That creates an unhealthy mindset. A better mindset is to practice mindfulness and to fully experience the things you're going through at the time you're going through them. Be in the moment. If that moment is shitty, then that's okay. Be in that moment and feel what it feels like to feel bad. If it's happiness, then accept that and be in the moment. What you don't want to do is focus on something in the future or past and feel bad feelings about that. But you also don't want to focus on the past or future and feel good feelings. That's not going to help you. Focus on yourself in the moment. Not a therapist, but someone told me, stop being a whiny bee. It made me sick that you always told me that you're hungry but doesn't know if you want to eat every time. Then months later he said, people who committed suicide are selfish. They don't think about the impact of people around them after they done that. From that time I decided to save money for therapist. Not a therapist or anything, but it's always kind of bugged me when people say it will get better to people who are depressed or suicidal. When I was in college, my mom passed away. A couple months later, my honors program required us to do group projects to help the community or something. I ended up in a group that chose to help organize a suicide awareness walk on campus. It was really a strange and ironic sort of feeling, as I was working with this group to organize an event about suicide, and also attending the walk, while feeling depressed and almost suicidal myself. And one thing that stood out to me was how many people and signs would say things like don't give up. Things will get better. I know that logically, this makes sense to a lot of people. Suicide is obviously not good, and if you stick around then there is a chance for your life to improve. But those words just come across as so empty to someone who is actually suicidal. It's hard to believe that things will get better when you are that depressed or traumatized. And mental illnesses like depression don't usually just go away, either, or they might get better for a short time before returning again. So sometimes things don't just get better. I don't really know what the right words to say to a suicidal person are, but it will get better really doesn't mean all that much to someone in that frame of mind. Denial of confirmation bias. It's everywhere. Lately there's been an increase in social media posts telling people that self-care involves cancelling plans, eating junk food, not leaving the couch all day, and buying whatever you want. These are things that you shouldn't feel guilty about doing in moderation, but when done often can definitely worsen depression and anxiety. Self-care is all about finding a balance between loving yourself and treating yourself well and pushing yourself to be your best. That means things like eating healthy, exercising regularly, socializing with loved ones, and generally pushing yourself out of your comfort zone often are just as important as treating yourself and having quiet, restful days. End your life and you'll find peace. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.